Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. So I have to say, I've had some really cool guests on with me. I've made some friends. I've been really lucky. But today, I'm going to be a little biased because today is actually one of the interviews or episodes I've been most looking forward to because we get to do it with someone that's really cool. It's my cousin. Yep. High five, Faris Aranki. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Faris, and then I'm going to pass it on to you because I would love to try to introduce you and your business properly, but I'm going to butcher it so tremendously, so
Okay.
I'm not even going to try. So first of all, we are separated by an ocean. You are in the UK, and it's very sad. Yes. So we're first cousins on mom's side, your dad's side, my mom's side, and we are the coolest people in our family. So we won't tell the others that, but we're both business owners and you do some really, really cool stuff on a business strategy side of the world. But
I do.
I'm so excited about what we're going to talk about because you would never think that what you do would in any way align with what I do, but it actually does. So I'm passing it on to you. Hello,
Over
welcome.
to
Tell
me.
us about
Hello,
you.
cousin. Hello, 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 and hello, listeners, viewers, all the way from London, England. Apologies if I slip into a terrible American accent. I have that habit. No, I am Faris Aranki, and I am the CEO and founder of a company called Sheer Ghetto Consulting. Now, Sheer Ghetto is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone. So if you've ever had a knife or a pair of scissors that's gone dull, you might have used a sheer ghetto to sharpen it because it's a perfect analogy. That's what we do. We go into companies and sharpen their strategies, sharpen their people, how they work together, the things they work on. And we do that in a range of innovative ways. But basically, we get in the middle of them and we facilitate them, or we teach them to do what we do. We teach leaders to do what we do so that they can go out and do with their teams, which is a lot like being a therapist, right? We don't call ourselves therapists, but we come in, we either help with actually, we have three components that we help with. We help with IQ, right? Are you getting the right ideas in your business? Are they the great ideas? We help with EQ. Are you actually taking others on the journey with you? Have you got strong relationships? Is everybody on your bus? Is everyone on your team? And then we work on FQ, which is focus, because a lot of us our focus can drift, and we're not working on the things we should be working on. So IQ, EQ, FQ, it's like being a therapist, as I said.
Love it. I love it. Okay. And so, um, tell us a little bit about what that looks like when you go, like if a company calls you and they're like, oh my gosh, I need this amazing person to come
Yeah.
in and improve us. Like, what would make them even need you to begin with?
So it's really funny you say that because me and my team, we typically work with senior leaders, right? And there aren't many senior leaders out there who would admit to being crap at anything, right? They don't say, hey, Faris, I need help running a meeting. They go, no, I'm brilliant at running meetings, right? They don't say, hey, Faris, I need help, having a difficult conversation with my team member. No, I'm great at that because I'm the boss. Usually what they ring us, they say, look, there's a problem with my team. Right? They usually blame the other person. They go, there's a problem with my team. Can you come in? We're just not able to all agree on something, or the two departments are having a bit of a problem, or the team just don't seem bought in. So that's usually where they come and call us, right? But it's very funny for people to actually either be aware of the actual problem, or know how to articulate it. So I just go listening. How I start working with companies is I go and talk to people and I listen for their problems, and I say, look, that's really interesting. When I worked with a company X over here who had a similar problem, this is how we helped. So that's how people come to us. And then what does it look like? Yeah, like I said, we get in the middle and we facilitate. Right? We use a range of techniques to bring people into the conversation, challenge the biases a team might have. All the kind of things you can think of, like we're not listening from everyone in the team, right? We just tend to over pander to the extroverts because they're the loudest talkers. Doesn't mean they have the best ideas. Doesn't mean that you're getting the highest quality input, or people all follow what the boss said because they're the boss. Again, that's not necessarily the best decision the team could make. So we're there to challenge those biases in a way that gets everyone involved. It's a lot about inclusivity.
Love it. It's so interesting when you talk about how people don't want to say, oh, hey, I'm having a hard time. I'm having a problem. I'm not good at this. Human nature in a nutshell, basically, right? It's so hard to admit that we're struggling. It's so hard to get to the point where you're like, I'm not good at this and I need to call in a professional. And the people who do that are usually ready to work. They're like, okay, I need to find someone, but most people don't know that they need to change. So,
Yeah.
it's funny because it sounds like you, I love I go in there and I listen because you are a therapist, basically. You have to hear it, you have to pull stuff out of it, and then you have to kind of figure out how to tell them what they need without really calling them out. So, first, before we dive in, how did you get into this?
Oh, well, that's really interesting. So I was a strategy consultant for 12 years. So I worked in the kind of McKinsey world, for those who know that kind of high-end strategy consultant, where you're a big brain for hire. You are paid to solve complex problems for companies. And I did that for 12 years. I enjoyed it very much. But what I realized in that 12 years was, of all the problems that we solved and all the solutions we gave the clients, 90% of the time they did nothing with it, right? Not because it was the bad idea, right? We would say, look, you need to close this factory or you need to do this. It's because they didn't buy into the idea. They didn't believe it, or they had, for some reason, there was politics, or they had too much on already, but they just didn't do the idea. But they paid millions of dollars for the idea. So you're like, what a waste of value. So I became fascinated by this, and I realized it was all because of human problems. People who didn't understand, but they were in too high a senior position to say, look, I don't understand, or because the CFO hated the CEO, and if the CEO backed it, he would never agree with that, or all these sort of human things. And even more importantly, I realized I could sort those out. I was really good. I had a skill set to just get in and fix these things. And I think a lot of that skill came, Navad, from the fact that I spent 5 years as a high school teacher. So I used to teach. I used to teach high school math and economics. And do you know what? The most resistance audience in the world is a bunch of high schoolers who say math is dull. But you still got to get them to get excited and buy into it. And you know what? If you can do that, then with a CEO, a CFO, it's easy.
I love it. I don't know how we're related. I hate everything to do with math. It is like there is a deep fear and like anxiety attached to that. And meanwhile, you're willingly doing math. There's something wrong with you, by the way.
Well,
But it's
I blame your uncle, my dad, was
yes.
the math geek. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's gonna listen to this and be so
He is going to listen.
offended. It's gonna be great. Okay, so I obviously, we listen through our own kind of filter of what we do and how we apply it. And so as you're describing all these things, I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, that is essentially a marriage in a nutshell. Like when you go in to a marriage, to a relationship, and you look at what's going on and you say, okay, we need some restructuring here. The way that you guys are managing the communication and the parenting and all of this, like you're doing it, it's work, it's happening. Whether or not it's going well or not is up for debate, but that's essentially what I do, right? I go in from the therapy standpoint or from the relationship coaching standpoint, and I'm like, okay, we gotta change some things here. And you have to really be strategic about like, we're not flipping this, like we can't completely upend this business or this marriage, but we have to figure out how to make changes that keep everything running smoothly, but also we're making some pretty big adjustments that will help things not be, help you work smarter, not harder, basically.
Yeah.
So tell me, as you were, when you and I talked a few weeks ago and I was like, you need to do an episode with me. How did you, in your head, like, did you think about taking what you do and applying it to what I do?
I think, particularly if I think about, where I intervene and where me and the team help clients, very much on that EQ pillar, right? But even the other two, and I can touch upon those, but very much that EQ pillar. The EQ pillar that I always say to people is, if you want to be a successful leader in particular, you need to flex to what your team need, not expect them to come to you, right? You've got to be the most inclusive. You've got to reach your hand out rather than expect them to knock on your door. And if you're not doing that, then don't be surprised when they don't understand what you've asked them to do, or they start doing other things, or relationships begin to fracture. So And it's a bit like being in a marriage. You can't just be demanding of what you want all the time, because then the other person will be go, well, hang on a minute, this isn't working for me anymore, right? And they'll and at first they'll switch off, and there'll be misunderstandings. So it's exactly like that, right? And often we work with teams. I don't know if you've heard of this concept of teams of forming, storming, norming, and performing. Is this something you've ever come
No.
across? So in any relationship, there's this theory that you go through 4 stages, which is when you come together, it's called the forming stage. So let's imagine you have a score of 0 to 10 on how good a team you could be, like team performance. When you first come together, you might be a 7 or 8, right? You don't know each other, you're just working for the first time. And what you're doing initially is you're on your best behavior. Right, so it's the same in a relationship. It's like in dating. You're like you wear your best shirt, you tuck in your belly, you keep your elbows off the table, you do all the things, and then a few weeks in, right, you've got to know each other, and you begin to just let your true person come through, and people begin to get irritated because, oh my God, you eat that apple too loudly, you come in too, and that's the same with teams, right? You send me that email at 5 in the morning. I wasn't up at 5 in the morning, right? And that's called the storming phase. It's slowly you see performance go down, that number goes down, and arguments increase, right? And then you get to a rock bottom, and that's called the norming stage. It norms out, right? And that's where you start having the conversations you need to have. Okay, look, don't send me the emails in the morning. In return, I won't do this. Or let's all agree as a team, we're all going to be in the office on this day. We're going to, maybe you write a little team charter, a little contract that says we're all going to do this. And then what happens? You get to the performing stage and you hit that 10 out of 10 because you all know each other, and you're right. And this happens at every team. It happens at every relationship. You only need 2 people, right? And what I say to leaders is you cannot avoid that sort of flow. But what you can do is accelerate and get them through that storming and norming quicker. That is your role. That is your obligation, right? And if you're not doing it, I'm going to come in and do it for you. Because the quicker we get to that performing stage, you're going to have peak team members. You're going to have the best, right? So that's how it's like a marriage, because you got to get past the dating. That's fun. That's exciting. You got to get through the first few years and then at some point, little things, unless you talk about it, agree, and move on. And here's the thing that leaders, then I always say, by the way, buddy, anything changes to your team, you go right back to the start. Someone new joins, you get a new project, a new goal, things change, you're back to the start, right? You cannot avoid this. But the good thing is the second time round, you go through it quicker. The third time you go through it quicker, 4th time. So get used to doing this a lot as a leader.
Wow. Okay. I love it. Translation into marriage. Let's imagine that you are working with a company that has, what do we call them? Like if they're co-owners, right? So they're equally owning ownership, they have equal ownership of this business, this company.
Yeah.
And they have, so this is husband and wife, for example, or, married couple. Then they have the people that work for them. We're going to call those children. Yeah. So if you at the top level are supposed to be equal partners in this business, and you are really not, you don't have the same vision for how this business is supposed to operate. You have different perspectives on where we're spending money, how we're investing in, in the company, in the employees, in the time that the projects and all of that. Then you have a problem, because now you don't even know what your goal is for this business. So now imagine if you are parents and you don't have the same vision for how you're spending your money, how you're managing your time, how you're running your home, how you really kind of delegate responsibilities in the house, who's responsible for what, and parenting, you're not on the same page about parenting, well, then who's going to really feel that confusion? Your employees, your kids, right? Your kids are going to look at you and be like, this is a shit show. My parents are all over the place. They're arguing, they're fighting. They never seem to be enjoying being here. When we're around them, it's really tense. It's really stressful. And so then everyone feels it. And so it's the same at work. All your employees can tell when you don't know what you're doing, when you're not running your business well, and when you are really you're not in it for the right reasons. You're not taking the time to grow. And so do this. Explain to us EQ a little bit more, because I don't know that everyone understands what that is on a very basic level.
Yeah, so I'm not a Harvard professor, but for me, the EQ side of things is emotional intelligence, right? People with high EQ, first of all, they're probably the people you like spending time with, right? They are the people who can read a room, can see what's going on, can see when you're sad, can see when you're happy, and they know the right response. It's not just seeing that you're going through the emotions; they can react and give you what you need. And that's what great leaders do. And it's not always just on the emotions. It's sometimes things like how people like to be communicated with. Right. There are lots of different types of people in a business. You've got very technical people. They love numbers and charts and graphs. Right. And there's other people who hate numbers and graphs and charts. And being a good leader is being aware of that and seeing, oh no, I pulled out a chart here. This guy doesn't like a chart. Right. Let's quickly. Right. And I used to have a boss who was like that. He hated a spreadsheet. If you went into a room, he would start getting in a mood. Right. I realized later on it's because he wasn't very financially literate and he was ashamed of this. But I observed this very early on. And so I made sure that every time I did this presentation, there were no charts. Right. Or if one came up, I would jump on it and I would say, oh, well, we don't need this, for his benefit. So he didn't look like he was stupid. So it's that EQ doesn't have to just be around emotions. It's about understanding the other person and flexing to their needs. Right. Yeah. And a big part of it is understanding yourself. How do you react? What makes you angry? What happens when you are tired? And what is the impact you're having on others? Because if you don't know that, you could be causing a trail of destruction without even realizing it.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that that is so hard because what happens and tell me kind of if you see this on the business side of things, but from a relationship standpoint, and it kind of goes back to your description of like the buildup, like when we're first dating, there's this like, oh my gosh, I'm so tuned into you and what you want. Let me do little things for you. And like, it's very much a like dopamine rush of like, what can I do for you? And then over time, it becomes more about like, what am I getting out of this? And how do I feel? And are my needs being met? And that's human nature. Like, I think we all kind of crave validation and being happy and all of those things. But I think what is missing a lot of the times from a healthy relationship is the idea of being focused on each other. Like if I'm focusing on what you need and I'm constantly working on being mindful of how you are, what you need, what you're going through, but there's trust that you are doing that for me, then our needs are always met. I don't have to worry about making sure you know what I need because we already have made sure that we've established this framework of constantly being in communication and in a rhythm where we're checking in with each other and we're building on our strengths and we're improving our weaknesses. And so there's this mutual support constantly growing and you reevaluate and you check in all the time. But where you lose track of that is when you're too busy, you don't have time, you don't make time, you don't prioritize it. You're just going with the flow of things, whether it's on a business standpoint or a relationship standpoint. And before you know it, things are not operating well. Your emotional intelligence part is just you're either checked out or you just don't care, and then physically you're exhausted, you're not motivated, you're not working as hard, you're kind of just dragging through it. So I don't know, that's where my mind went. What do you think?
Yeah, there's loads of hooks there. Yeah, I mean, I love the analogies and yeah, there's so many complexities in business because you don't just have the children, i.e. the employees, you have your customers, right? You have your suppliers, the people who provide stuff to you. But anyway, anytime there's dysfunction, everyone spots it, or even worse in business, they take advantage of it. If they see you, which is a bit like the kids playing the parents off each other. Oh no, but mum said I could do this. So it is. There is a lot of analogies, and that sort of the EQ side that you talk about, and how it drags you down. If you don't pay attention to it, you don't sort of work on things together. That very much begins to play into the FQ, the focus. Many people just do stuff in life or in business because they've always done it, or because it's happened to them, not because it's actually getting them closer to what they said they wanted to do. And it's the same, I'm sure, in a relationship, you just start doing stuff and you don't go back to, hey, what did we say we wanted to achieve together, right? Yeah. And that could be small things like, oh, we agreed this month we're all going to live a healthy lifestyle. Why are you eating that Mars bar? Oh, because I always eat a Mars bar, right? You're not focusing, and it tips in. So that's how the interplay for me in some aspects. But yeah, there's it actually makes things easier. People don't realize this. Having clarity, having conversations actually makes it easier. But it just seems like effort to have those conversations in the first place.
Can I tell you we don't have Mars bars here?
Oh, you don't have Mars bars.
We
Okay.
don't have Mars bar. I think the closest it's a musketeer is what it's called here. I think it's the same thing.
Sorry,
So
sorry.
isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? No, and I'm just actually got
Well,
really
Mars is a US
sidetracked.
company, so I'm
I know, but I don't
surprised.
think they sell straight up Mars bars anymore. Maybe they do. I'm about to yell at my husband in the other room and see if it's true. But yes, it's not a thing. I missed those.
Well,
Sorry. Squirrel.
listeners, here you go. Here's your challenge. Post a Mars bar to Navat. The first listener will get a prize of a free
Yes.
coaching session.
Yes.
So the race is on.
I'm trying to stay professional. I've never had a serious conversation like this with you in my life. So this is so good for us. I'm so proud of us.
When you people you've seen only in one light, suddenly it's very weird. But
weird. We're kind of awesome though, right? We could do this. It's great. Our FQ is fantastic. But okay, so I want to go back to something you said. I'm sorry, I took us on a tangent. But when you're talking about like when people see the dysfunction, it's interesting where my mind went was the last person sometimes to see the dysfunction is the person at the top, right? Like everyone else can notice it, everyone else can see it. And then the other place my mind went to was like, I don't remember exactly how you worded it, but you were talking about like, are our goals aligned or something? But like essentially the why, like, why are we making this decision? Why are we making this decision in our business? Why are we making this decision in our relationship? And I think that is one of the things that just you get kind of swept away with the day-to-day of things, that you stop to ask yourself, is this strategy working for us? Or do we need to have a new strategy? And where difficulty comes in is in the need for change, right? So generally, I would say people don't like to change. It's very scary to change. It's very intimidating to change. Change, I think, is perceived as this like huge undertaking. And sometimes it is, but a lot of the times change is just a little thing. If you just kind of course correct this one thing, it could really align so many other things that it's just this little hitch in the road that needs to be improved. But I think generally speaking, people are very anti-change. And so then I'm going to throw another thought at you. One of the places, and you and I kind of spoke about this a little bit before we hit record, we're talking about the difference between like for my listeners or my clients, I work with the spouses, right? So say traditionally it's a husband and a wife. A lot of the time it's the wife who's tuning into my episodes or really scouring the interwebs for relationship type stuff. And the men are less likely to either seek it out or even jump on board when there's here's this program that might help us improve our relationship. And so when I was hearing what you were saying, I was thinking about how a lot of the times, especially men in corporate or like business roles who are very FQ focused, or like all the things where they're like, I want my business to run smoothly. I will do whatever it takes to get my business where I need it to be, to make all the right decisions. But that's not always carried over for them to their relationships. And this isn't to isolate men. There are a lot of women that are like this as well. But I think a lot of, maybe I don't have statistics for it, but what I've kind of found in my personal experience is that it's harder for the men to carry over that same level of engagement and maybe prioritization about like, I will invest in my marriage, in my relationship, the way I invest in my business. So is that really sexist of me to say that? Or do you feel like there may be, and it's not a knock on men. I know lots of career-driven women who are the same. It's the last on their list. So, okay, I'll stop talking. It's your turn.
Yeah, it is a bit of a generalization. I try and steer away from generalizations, but I do find that people who are very task focused probably are very task focused in as well. So there are more men at the tops of businesses. There are more men, and they got there by being very task focused, by really chomping at the bit on I need to do this. I don't care if I trample people, to get there. And sometimes those behaviors are rewarded in business counterintuitively. So it's very hard. I always say it's very hard to be two types of people, one at home and one, if you're a douchebag at work, you're probably a douchebag at home, right? And if you're a really nice person at work, you're probably a really nice person at home. And you can spot it. I run lots of training, and there'll always be people who say, oh, can I use this on my husband or wife? And I'm like, buddy, if you have to use this on your husband or wife, that's not an indication to me that this is you're in a good relationship or you're doing well. But I just want to pick up on your points of self-awareness. So one, and how men, mostly it's women who come to seek your help. So let's talk about self-awareness. A lot of people are completely not only unaware, but they don't want to hear the message. So it's how you inform them. Now, a lot of my work, I work with very senior people. And I use a technique called bruising their ego early, right? Unless they have confidence or trust in me, when I can then take them aside and they've got a growth mindset. And I say, look, buddy, you are terrible at listening. You are terrible at giving positive feedback to your team. I have to usually, bruise their ego and show them how crap they are. Show them how bad. Now, I'll talk about it. I'm working with a client, and he asked me to come along and facilitate his team meeting, strategy meeting, so an afternoon. And we got to the end of the day, and he said to me, I think that was brilliant. That was a great sort of 3 hours, Everyone agreed with all the ideas, and we're all aligned. And I said, really? Really? Because I'll tell you how I saw it. I saw 8 people sat in front of you who were scared to say anything, right? You were the only one, if you look at all the ideas that they agreed on, they're all your ideas. And anytime anyone said anything, you shut them down. You said something negative, like, that won't work. Steve, what do you know anyway? Those sort of things. And I said, don't take my word for it. We're going to watch back the video for 3 hours, and you're going to keep a scorecard of how many times you shoot down somebody's idea. And I bet you it'll be more than 50, right?
Wow.
Right. And so showing someone, holding up that mirror and actually, bruising their ego and going, look, there is no way you can avoid this. It's not me telling you, it's you telling yourself. Right. So that's a technique I use often: bruise the ego and piss them off so that they do pay attention. But here's the thing that I found in my journey, in my work. And I use a rough number, let's say only 10% of people want to change. Right. But 100% of people need to.
Yes.
So what do I do with the other 90%? I find ways, because people like change sometimes, right? In the latest iPhone, everyone rushes out to get it. Hey, well, unless they're, my dad or your mum, they're like, no, don't bring me new technology, right?
If you're a Samsung person like me, stop it.
Or if you're a Samsung, okay, I was going to say a new phone, but some people rush towards certain changes that don't. So let me tell you the story of a team I was working with where it's all alpha, very aggressive men mostly. Okay, but because they're a trading team, right? So they were rewarded for making big decisions, and they grew up to believe that they were the most important person in the room, and that they didn't need other people around them, but they did. They needed to be part of a team. So when I talked to this guy on day one, I said, tell me about your team members. He said, I couldn't care less about my team members. I said, how long have you been sitting next to that guy that you sit next to in the office? He said, 8 years. And I said, what can you tell me about him? He said, nothing. I said, has he got kids? Has he got a wife? He said, I don't care. Why are you asking me? This is irrelevant. And I was like, wow, okay. I need him to care about this guy who sits there. I need to even see him as a person, right? So I said, it's not going to happen by me saying, look, you need to see this guy as a person. But I did know what his personality type was. He likes competition. He likes winning. So the next team meeting we had, I said to all 8 of them, okay, guys, today we're going to play a game, a gambling game. You each have to put in $50. Winner takes all. Suddenly they're all interested. Okay, I want to win this game. And I said, okay, today's question is, how many kids do we all have in total? Right? You have to guess. You cannot repeat a guess of somebody else. So we can start with person 1. Person 1 goes, there's 8 of us. The average number of kids is 2.1. That's going to be 17 kids. So I'm going with the number 17. Then the next person, I'll go 60. And I'll go 80. That's not the point of the game. The point of the game is I then go, Navad, how many kids you got? All right. Tell me their names. How old are they? So we take like 20 minutes to unpack, right? Next week we do pets. Next week we do cars, holidays, right? You know what happens? By the end of 6 weeks, they're asking each other in the coffee room, hey, how's those kids I heard about, right? Because I leaned into their behaviors what they told me about themselves was important. I was like, I don't care who wins the $50. I don't care who wins the $400. Right? I'm getting you without you realizing to give a shit about each other, and you're going to be better off for it. So you can get people to change if they reveal their drivers to you. So you can get men to turn up to your counseling sessions. You just have to leave my hypothesis.
Oh, you cut out. I just have to do what? You froze.
You just have to lean into their drivers and
Yes.
avoid their resistors. Is my theory.
Yes, I know. So harassment is what you're saying. No, but absolutely. And I think traditionally, there's just it's harder to ask, I think the higher, what'd you say? Task or no, you said something, it wasn't task oriented, like maybe high achieving people, men or women.
Yeah.
I think it's usually harder to ask for help. It's harder to know, it's harder to recognize that you need help. And then even if you recognize it, there's a lot of self-worth, I think, attached, or identity attached to asking for help, because I think that means that you have to admit that you're human and that you're not fantastic, and especially when you're in a leadership role, because by definition, you are supposed to know more. You are supposed to be better. You are supposed to be at the top. And if you're at the top and you're supposed to be in charge and people are supposed to come to you, but you are not okay and you're struggling, then that is a very hard thing to admit. And that's the same in a marriage. I think that, you could even, I kind of bring up this a lot with couples too, is it's hard to look around and see how everyone else is doing it, whether it's your next door neighbor or the perfect couple on Instagram. It's hard to see how they do it and then feel like, well, we don't do it that way and we need help. Or maybe there's something wrong with what we see online and maybe we are normal. Like there's so much confusion that people feel about what they're supposed to be doing. What kind of marriage should they have? What kind of business should they run? And those shoulds get in the way of like, are you happy? Is this working for you? Like, just break it down to what you need, that self-awareness of the why. Why do we do this thing? Why do we make this decision in our budget? Do we buy this car because that's the one we want, or because we want people to see us and think we're fancy? Like, every decision that you make, and in some small ones, you just make them and then you go with it. But the bigger ones, it has to align with who you are as an individual, as a couple, or as a business. And I think that all too often we forget that we're a part of a team. And so for you, when you're talking about that man you were working with who didn't give a crap about his employees, it just, again, it's like a team. You can't operate well within a team if you don't work as a team. And a marriage is a team. A family is a team, always. I mean, I don't know. I love your example of how you just think people to just be a little bit more open with each other. It goes a long way. It doesn't even have to be anything super vulnerable. It's just care.
Yeah, and the difference between your world and my world is, unfortunately, people don't pay me to make the teams feel better, right? The only reason I was allowed to work with that team and I continue to work with that team is because their performance went up by 6%, right?
Wow.
By making them do this, I said, okay, this is the way to get them to improve, right? Because once they're a team, they're bouncing ideas off each other. They're trust, like you said, it's that trust. Like, hey, buddy, I'm not sure about this decision I'm about to make. What do you think, right? Whereas before, if you don't like the person or don't even recognize it, you're not going to go and ask them that, right? So you get better quality decisions, better quality management, right? So yeah, unfortunately, I'd love to be paid to make teams feel better, but I am paid to turn results around, like metrics, like sales or costs, or but you know what? That's the key to making it happen sometimes.
Yeah. It's just a different measuring stick, right? Like your outcomes are sales and like numbers and things like that, whereas my outcomes are more they're not as quantitative, right? They're qualitative. It's the feeling good. It's how does are we arguing as much? Are we fighting as much? Is our family, are we having fun as a family? Are we doing things to enjoy? Do we hug each other, hold each other more? Do we talk more? Like, and you're right, that is hard to measure. And I think that might be, maybe that's part of why certain like high achieving people struggle to ask for my kind of help, because how do we measure that progress? What does that even mean? I can't bring a spreadsheet to you and tell you, here's how your numbers for this year have been, and here's how I can make it improve. Instead, it's tell me how you like on a given day. Do you like your family? Do you enjoy being home? Do you drive home because you're excited to be there, or do you wish you could stay at the office longer because what's waiting for you is an absolute crap show? Like it's a different measuring stick. And so, but with that, I was also thinking earlier, one thing you said triggered a thought where um, what when you were saying people, if someone's nice at home, they're nice at work kind of thing. But I don't know. I think a lot of the time, kind of to your point where they see results by working really, really hard. So the results are tangible there. So they work harder there. The results at home, by coming home and spending time with your family, you don't get the attaboy or the attagirl. You don't get the reward as much. And so that can be harder it's a harder motivator. So how do we motivate people to give more of themselves in their relationship when the outcome's not as tangible?
I think, and I don't know the answer, and I'm not a therapist, but I think the more you have shared goals, right? So I'm going to just sort of contradict you a little bit, but the more you have a shared goal as a family, as a couple, and you're really clear on those, right? And they can be stupid things like how much have we worked out this year, how much weight we lost, how much money, how many holidays we've been on this year. And I'm not saying go after superficial things. It could be how many times we see our family and spend quality time, how many nights we spend in. I think the more you talk about it, you make those agreements, you have that clarity, you can measure those outcomes, right? Those are things you can measure. And actually, I bet you the couples that talk more and have better relationship are better at saving money.
Yeah.
Right. If that was your key thing to do, right? And the economy isn't the greatest at the moment, and so that's probably a conversation around every dinner table. And I bet you it goes a lot easier with the couples that have a strong relationship, have open communication, are vulnerable with each other, than the ones who don't. And every decision around everything from the weekly shop is a fight or is a passive aggressive conversation.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's what is that is one of the most it's a harder thing to measure on paper, but it's so easy to measure it in, as cheesy as this sounds, and I forgive me, but it's you can measure it in your heart, Faris. But it's that feel good, like the difference between being in your home and feeling the tension and the dissatisfaction versus the like comfort and the just it's just relaxing, it's pleasant, that you can measure. You can tell when that person walks in and they're just quiet and they seem to be in a mood versus when they're, playful or engagement, they engage and stuff like that. But okay, well, let me ask you this. From the work that you've done, because I don't know how long you get to measure out like how long the progress lasts and stuff, but like what do you see, what are the kinds of changes that people are making in your world that seem to have the longest impact, like where they really can hang on to it and implement it long term without you? Like once you've done your work, you walk away, they still carry it forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so I always say if I can work with a team for 3 months, and that's not like on a daily basis, then we can start to see things change, right? And the other thing is I tell teams, do not try and change too much in one go, right? That's where things begin to, where you go, okay, we're going to work on our communication skills, we're going to work on our timekeeping, we're going to, right, pick one thing. And usually I get the team to decide what's the most important thing. And that's the thing, that's the better question, rather than going, hey, in my experience, it's always this, right? So you guys to all improve here, because I'd rather have them buy into something and actively work on it, because that will be the biggest uplift. But if, let's say I had a team and they had loads of things and they really want to go, I think that that sort of giving each other feedback more regularly and listening, right, is pound for pound the things that make the teams change behaviors. It helps get through that curve to the performing more. It gives you the information so you can do stuff, right? Because too many of us don't get enough of that information, particularly if we don't have self-awareness in teams. So, being able to give more regular feedback, both good and bad,
Yep.
I think is a number one thing that leaves a lasting impression for teams.
Yeah. And, I think one thing that you and I both do, but it probably looks a little different for both of us, but what I tell couples is I'm not going to tell you the exact right way. Like, I can't tell you right here, right now, if you do this, this is going to completely transform your communication. But what I can do is teach you a framework for how to start listening to each other. What are the like do's and don'ts of basic communication and respect and just mutual respect, I guess. But yeah, like if we talk about the basics, if we talk about what you shouldn't do and what's not okay, and we talk about what you want to aim for, then within that, then we personalize it. Like you go into a company and you listen to what they need, and based on that you come up with a framework, a plan, and then you teach them how to understand this framework and implement some of the details. But then your trust, your hope is that when you walk away, if something new comes up that they have to deal with in 6 months or a year, they have learned that framework. They remember, they know, okay, Fed has taught us that we need to sit down and we need to listen and we need to strategize and we need to each contribute in this way. And we each need to take the time to look at this thing and work on this thing. And by doing that, they can address whatever this new thing is that's coming up. And they don't need to call you in every single time a change happens. I mean, that'll be fun for business, but ultimately you want them to learn how to run things without panic mode, without things falling apart every time some new challenge comes up. And that's essentially what I teach people in marriage is you're going to have hardship. You're going to have arguments. You're going to have disagreements. When you add another kid to the mix, or you add a new, job, or just transition with your child and their age or their whatever, you have to come together and you have to figure out, are we doing this a way that is working well for our family? Do we need a new strategy? Do we need to address this differently? Do we need outside support? But ultimately, it's, have we learned how to come together? Have we learned how to handle our issues so that we can or look at our issues a certain way to then find the solution? Like that's the ultimate goal of what you and I both do. I didn't realize we did something so similar. This is kind of cool.
There you go. It's a small world.
I know.
No, well, it's great that we do, right? And actually, I wrote a blog, I write a weekly blog, and I was in a couple of weeks ago, I was kind of trying to dissect why I do what I do. And there may be many of the similar reasons why you do what you do, and I won't, I'll leave it as a hook for listeners to go and find my blog and
Yes.
and read all about that. But yeah, actually, yeah, the apples never fall far from the
I
tree
know. Isn't
is
that
probably.
awesome? We are kind of great. It's fine. We won't toot our own horn. But
I
no, I
think I'm a
think,
little more humble than you, but that's
I don't
that's
know.
a
Yeah, I guess. No, it's
that's
true.
the difference between the American upbringing and the UK upbringing. We're very
Dude,
sort of.
I was not raised here.
I know,
It's
but
fine.
yeah,
But
it's
no, it is. I think, and again, it's so weird having a serious conversation with you because I think we usually just resort to like insults and humor
yeah,
and things. It's
yeah,
great.
yeah. And
It's fine.
I joke about the American way of doing things. Like I often use it. So a lot of what we talked about today is about narratives. It's what I call narratives in your own head. Stories
Hmm.
you tell yourself, things you go and you find it hard to break or change. Now, I once read a really fascinating report about a bunch of English salespeople who were doing okay at their job, not great, and they had to follow a script. And they told these people for a month, do your job, but just do it in an American accent. Doesn't matter how good the American accent is, right? And at the end of the month, they'd analyze their results, and everybody in the team had improved by at least 20%, right? And when they got them in a room, they said, why was this? They realized that Brits associate Americans as being more confident. So just by putting on a voice, even if it was a terrible accent, they would go into every conversation a bit more confident. So when people resisted, they say, no, 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 we can do this, right? So I read this and I went, that's a load of rubbish. I'm going to try it with the next team that I did. And do you know what? It worked, right? So it doesn't have to
Wow.
be an American accent, but I often tell my teams, I said, okay, imagine the most communicative person or the most visionary person, leader that you know. I want you to be them for the next meeting or something like
That's
that. And it's
funny.
amazing how it can help reframe in their head. And they're like, oh, I was just playing a role. And you're like, no, buddy, you're still the same person. And all we did was flick a switch to calm, quieten a narrative that you've been having in your head for a very long time.
Love it. Oh my gosh, yes. And that goes so, I mean, this could be a whole other conversation because that can go into the whole anxiety and all
Oh,
kinds
yeah.
of things, right? But it is, and kind of an added to that, it's like you start taking yourself a little less seriously and you can have some fun doing the same thing that you already are doing, but like it stops being so boring, I guess, add some fluff and
Had some
some,
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Well,
love it.
I bet you all your listeners want to work with me now. They're like, oh,
Oh
he'll have us
yeah.
doing accents.
I
Yeah.
know. Talk about animals and kids and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Right.
as much as I would love to keep
Yes.
going, let's wrap this up.
Agreed.
So tell us a little bit if when these wonderful people are like, I want to learn more about this guy, I want to read his blog. So
Mm-hmm.
where can they find you? And I'll link to all the things, but what are
Okay,
some
you'll
of the
link to all of these.
important links? Yes.
Yeah, so I think the two places to find me. One is, do you see the pillow behind me? I don't know if people can
Yes.
see it. Yeah, that was made by your aunt. That is the logo for my company, which is Sheer Ghetto. So
Oh,
if
I
you want to
love
know,
it.
visit sheerghetto.com. You'll find out a lot
Oh,
more about us. That is, yeah, Auntie Saha made that to
love it.
support the company. And then the other place to find out more is LinkedIn. So I spend probably too much of my life on LinkedIn. I love it. But come and find me, Faris Aranki. I think there's only one Faris Aranki on LinkedIn. I post every day. I share my life, what it's like building a small business, and tips how to apply the work that I do into your life. And yeah, just hit me up. So those are the two best places to come find me, find out a bit more, and get yourself a therapist if you don't have one, or a coach.
Or
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
relationship coach by the name of
Good
Navarre
relation.
Wilborn.
Good
Um,
yeah.
you actually, I have to tell you, you are a very fun LinkedIn poster. Like you shared the fun adventures in London,
Yeah.
like where you go and what you do and who you talk to. Like I aspire to be as cool as you one day.
Okay,
One
inshallah.
day. This is funny. Okay, Faris, thank you so much. This was so good. Hey, it gives us a chance to just connect and talk. We don't get to do that as much these days, but
That's true.
now you're gonna walk into your next client meeting and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I am looking at all of you like family and married couples that I have to help you get on the same page in your parenting and all these things. So, and now I'm going to look at all couples like business owners. It's going to be fantastic. All right. Love you, cuz. Thank you so much. To be continued. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.